Today's lesson looks at the demographic transition model. Hopefully you've had time to have a chat with the person next to you and think about what these two terms mean. When we refer to demographic, we're talking about features of a country's population. When we refer to transition, we're talking about change. So the demographic transition model is looking at changes in a country's population or a place's population, and in this case we're looking at change over time. This is basically what the demographic transition model looks like. If we just have a look at the basics of it, you can see you've got three lines on this. One of them, the orange line, shows you total population. The green line is showing you death rate, so the number of people that die per 1,000 people. And the blue line is showing birth rate, so the number of people that are born per 1,000 people. They will have been terms that you came into contact with last lesson. And then along the top you see we've got these different stages, and it goes from stage 1 all the way to stage 5. Now what we need to think about is what these different stages represent and how we can use this model to understand a bit about how countries change over time. Now, the demographic transition model looks at different stages of development that countries are in. So as we are now in 2020, we could plot all of the countries of the world on the demographic transition model and say what stage of development they are in. If we just have a look at these different stages, each one at a time, we'll understand a little bit about what they are. So in stage one is that you can see there you've got a very high birth rate and a very high death rate. So lots of people are being born, but also you've got lots of people dying. And population is fairly low. And you can see there that it's barely growing. So it's increasing a little bit, but it's not increasing very much. And that's because of all the people that are being born, you've got obviously lots of people dying. So even though people are having lots of children, people aren't living very long, and therefore population's only increasing quite slowly. Now in terms of what types of countries we find in stage 1, they tend to be places that are very traditional. It's a pre-industrial lifestyle. So this is of like a very low income country or even a community. It could be a rainforest community, or it could be a country that's having real struggles. What are the reasons for these things? So you've got a high birth rate because children might be needed for work and lots of children might die. It could be the case you've got no birth control. And that could be also linked to social and religious factors as a reason why maybe contraception is not used, or anything to do with why big families are preferred. You've got a high death rate because you've got not got good enough medical facilities to be able to give people vaccinations. There's no way of controlling disease. You've probably not got a good understanding of hygiene, things such as simple things like washing hands, and it also might be the case that food production is very unreliable. Stage 2 of the demographic transition model, you can see that things are starting to change in a country. Your birth rate is still very high, however it's stopped fluctuating as much, and your death rate is really starting to drop down. And also you can see there, which is unsurprising, populations start to increase. So here in stage 2, what's probably happened is that a country started to get vaccinations and it started to be able to improve disease control. It might be the case that they've also got improved food production or improved sanitation, so keeping yourselves clean. And you've just seen there you've got a huge drop in death rate. However, birth rates are still high because it's still quite a poor country, still a low income country, and therefore children are needed for work. You've still got a high infant mortality. You've still not got access to contraception. Children are still needed to help you out when you get older. So this country is still a very undeveloped country. It's still a very low income country. However, things are starting to change. And one of the things we associate with this stage is very quick and rapid population increase. And you can see listed below are some examples of stage 2 countries. Stage 3 here, you can see again, you've got that death rate is continuing to fall, But one of the key things in this stage is a real drop in birth rate. You can see there it's really diving downwards, and population continues to increase. So what's the reason for a drop in birth rate? Well, infant mortality rates are dropping, so there's less need to have maybe 10 children in the hope that 6 might survive. Yeah, you know if you're going to have 6 children, those 6 children will live. Women become more educated, they become more empowered, and this means that they're starting to have jobs and careers, and that means that they are choosing to have children later in life. And if you're having children later in life, that might reduce the number of children that you can have, and also it might be a case that you're living in a society that's becoming more, things are becoming more expensive, and there might be the idea that you can't really afford to have as many children. Contraception becomes more readily available, and so people are making more choices again about when to have children. Children no longer needed to work as well, and so there is less of a need to have children. Death rate again continues to drop because food production becomes very stable, sanitation again continues to improve, and you can see you're also going to have things like improved medical help. And there your population, you can see, is really rapidly increasing. And those countries at the bottom there, let's have a look at Central American countries. You've also got Indonesia, Malaysia, India, Morocco, these countries that are seeing quite rapid population increase. Stage 4 looks at where your birth rate and death rate have got quite low. You can see there the population continues to increase, but it's starting to drop off a little bit. So that speed of increase is not as quick as it was previously. So population growth is slowing down. You've got a fluctuating birth rate and death rate. So it's low, and that's the important part here. We're saying that it stays low. So this is continuation really from stage 3, where people again are choosing to have fewer children. People are obviously choosing to have careers and going to work, having families much later in life. And you're getting to the point here where actually the average family size is less than 2 children, and so population stops increasing. Your death rate again is going to be low, but you're also going to start to see an increase in life expectancy. So you might have a more aging population. Now, stage 4 is kind of the developed world here. We're talking about high-income countries, and you can see there most European countries are going to be in stage 4. Their populations are still increasing gradually. However, they are starting to level up. You're not getting that rapid increase that you got previously. Stage 5 is a stage where countries are transitioning into now, and these are probably the most developed countries in the world. So Japan and Germany would be a good example of this. And what you've got here is actually a population which is aging, and you can see there that death rate starts to actually creep up a little bit. So you've got a population that's aging, and people are having less and less children, and so maybe people, like average family size is around 1, so people are having 1 child. And what you'll find is that means that population actually starts to decrease slightly. And in these countries, especially Japan, they are seeing their populations are starting to decline. They're starting to go down because people have had either no children at all, or they've had 1 or 2 children, and then so they're not replacing themselves. And what we're finding there is that you get a really unbalanced population where you've got lots of old people and not as many young people, and it can become really problematic. So stage 5 is a very interesting stage, and although the countries are at their most developed, it does present itself with problems. Now, one last thing I'd want to say about the model is that obviously in 2020 now where we are, all countries are at different stages of this model, but most countries will have moved through the model. So if we take the example of the UK and think about where we are now, we're probably somewhere in between stage 4 and stage 5. However, the UK would have previously been, if you go back to sort of medieval England, it would have been in stage 1. And then actually the UK, when we were going through the Industrial Revolution, might have been in stage 2, heading into stage 3. And then stage 3 might have been sort of the UK in the late 1800s and early 1900s. So we have gone through these stages previously. So countries do move through the model as well as being at a fixed point now. Now what I'd like you to do is the following things. So 1, you're going to write a definition of the demographic transition model. So just explain what the model is. 2, you're going to explain what we mean by this term natural change and natural decrease, and you can find that in the book. Apart from births and deaths, what other factors will affect population change in countries? So obviously population will change when people are born and when people die. That will increase and decrease population. But what other factors could affect that? Have a think about people moving around the world, and how that might contribute towards it. And then your main task is number 4. I want you to try and make a simple copy of the demographic transition model. And then underneath it, you're going to write a few sentences about the characteristics of each stage. So you're going to put a subheading for each stage. You're going to have stage 1, and then you're going to write in bullet points the key factors of each of those stages. So has it got a high birth rate, a low birth rate? Describe it if you can, and also give examples of the countries that you might find. Then at the bottom there, you've got a question. It says, how effective is the demographic transition model in showing economic change over time? So how effective is the DTM in showing economic change over time? And here I want you to think about how changes in birth rate and death rate might be linked to economic change. On the next slide, here we have an example answer. So I put the DTM is effective in showing economic change over time because as you move through stages, death rates fall. This would suggest more investment in healthcare and vaccinations. There is also a decrease in birth rate. This could mean women are going to work and having careers as well and having children later in life. So I've tried to link it there to make sure it's linked to economic reasons. So the first economic reasons is about investment. It's about a country being wealthier and being able to afford to buy medical care. And then the second one is about women going into work and doing jobs. Yeah, so it's linked to an economic reason. It's only 4 marks, so as long as I'm developing my points just once, that's absolutely fine.